Well, Donna, it's been quite a journey for us into energy medicine. I think people will be interested to know how you got into energy medicine.
Oh, yes. Well, growing up, I had several different ailments. When I was very young, I had tuberculosis. When I got a little bit older, I became allergic to everything that grew out of the ground. Literally, it was like poison in my body. I didn't have the enzymes to metabolize. And then by the time I was 16, I had multiple sclerosis. And it got worse and worse, except for when I was pregnant, and then I'd have no symptoms when I was pregnant. And then when the pregnancy was over, all the symptoms would
Isn't
return.
that interesting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. And so at 27, my organs began to break down, and I had a heart attack at 27. And my multiple sclerosis was getting worse and worse, and there were days that I couldn't walk. And also I had numbness, like people get tetany in their toes. I got it all over my body. So sometimes I couldn't talk well or talk. And finally, at about 28 or 29, I went to see 5 different specialists to see what they could do.
Physicians?
Physicians. Not a one of them could help me. In fact, they were much more alarmed because all my organs were breaking down. And I had every one of them say that, I had only a certain amount of time that I was going to live, that I really needed to live my life with that understanding that there was no more they could do, really. And so when that 5th doctor said that, something happened to me. I don't know why, but I got happy. I thought, oh, I'm going to have to heal myself, because I knew I could heal myself. I mean, I knew I was supposed to be healed. I knew I was supposed to raise my daughters, and I knew that I could do something. So as soon as I got home that day, I began to experiment on myself. And the very first thing I ever did was I put my hand on just right below my hip on the left side, and my other hand over the knee. And this area on my leg, the quadriceps, were the area that just didn't have any energy in them. I couldn't walk. I could not walk with those. So I would hold it like that. And I noticed it only took about 3 minutes before the energy connected up. And from that moment on, I just experimented and experimented, and was very excited about it. I wasn't, even when something didn't work, I didn't feel despair. Instead, I thought, whoa, I got to figure this out. I was so curious, and I would say throughout all these years since, I've thought that was one of the best things I received, was just staying with my curiosity. When something didn't work, I would find a way that it would make it work. And I want everybody to know that curiosity is one of the best things you've got going for yourself. And so I did. I finally, the first thing I got well on, though, was my allergies to wheats and grains. I'd never been able to eat them all my life. And suddenly I could eat sandwiches. I could eat anything. And I also lost 17 pounds without trying. And it was just shifting my energy. And it turned on my metabolism. It did everything. And then when I got over my multiple sclerosis, I wanted to share it with everybody. I just want it, not to share that I'd gotten well, but I wanted everybody to know that they could get well, that everybody could be more empowered than they are, and get well.
And it's an extraordinary story, because generally multiple sclerosis is not seen as an illness that people can cure, that people can get over. It took you a couple of years from...
Yes, but I would like to comment about that. Western medicine is very quick to say you can't get over it, but that's because they don't use natural means. Any autoimmune illness is where the body turns against you, and it's because the energy's gotten so confused that once you get your energy straightened out, it's just a given. You're going to be okay.
How long from when you first started those experiments till you felt some benefits, and how long till you were pretty symptom-free?
Oh, well, the very first day, putting my hands on my legs, I felt benefits. I felt, because I could see and feel the energy moving. And then each day, I'd have a little bit of something. And then some days a bigger something. And it went like that. And I remember driving to the school and knowing that I was safe driving a car. I remember that, to pick up my kids at school one day, and that I knew I was safe driving the car. And so it went like that. It took almost 2 years for everything to be gone, but I didn't have anybody telling me what to do. I had to experiment, which I think is a great way to heal yourself. Experiment on yourself.
But you were really inventing Eden energy medicine in the process, weren't you? That was where you really got the first principles and techniques.
Yes.
Because you didn't have any training in this.
No.
This
Yeah.
was all invented by you for healing yourself, because you wanted to survive and bring up Gandhi and
raise
Chaitanya.
my kids, and I didn't think it was such a miracle, but on the other hand, I did think it was a miracle. I think that, wow, but I thought that everybody could do this. Why aren't we? Why isn't everybody on the planet healing themselves? Why isn't everybody doing this? So that's what I felt.
So when you started to see people, you hadn't had any training in that, and you just started to look at their energies. How did you approach it?
Oh, I approached it with such enthusiasm and excitement that I just so, it wasn't any kind of plan. I just wanted whatever people had. I wanted to show, here's what you can do. Here's what you can do for yourself. Here's what you can do. And often I did it, but then I'd teach them. And eventually I did go off and learn how to energy test with the Touch for Health Foundation.
Right.
Because they really taught me how to do that. And
Right, but when you taught people what to do for their condition, how did you know? How did you know what they needed to do?
Well, I've always been able to see energy. So I could see it and I could feel it. In fact, that was probably what led me into working on myself, is that, and I'd never used it for any kind of healing before, but I always could see people's energies and could see just, what was off in them, or what was great with them, what was bothering them, what was, and just things like that. So when I did not have any energy on my legs, I wanted to restore it somehow, and I just somehow knew I could.
So your ability to see energy, which some people think is extraordinary, for you just seemed natural.
Well, I was 20 before I found out that the whole world didn't see energy. I just assumed everybody did. And I also know that everybody does see energy and have a much stronger connection to their sensory world when they're in that first year of life. And it just often goes away because we live in a world where nobody keeps that alive. But I had a mother who saw, and a brother and a sister, and
So it was just natural in your
it was
family.
natural. We all felt sorry for my dad because he couldn't.
So even though you'd never used it in a healing context, once you applied it to yourself, then you got the connection that,
Yes.
this can be used for healing.
Yes.
And that's when you started working with
Yes.
people. And it sounds like you went into it with enthusiasm and confidence.
And excitement and everything, yes.
Yeah. And then you talked about Touch for Health, where you learned energy testing so that you could work with people that couldn't see energy
Yes.
and really show them how they can work with their energies.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so when you started to work with people, do you remember back to one of your first times of working with someone, one of your first cases?
I can remember a lot of those first cases. I remember where a woman came to me with ovarian cancer, and she had a large tumor, and she was scheduled to have surgery, and I, I began working on her, and and that's how I began working with chakras, is just aligning my energies up with that circular movement. And as I felt it, I thought, whoa, there's a real response in that cancer. And the more I worked with it, she had come with a lot of pain, and the pain disappeared just by working in that circular movement way. And I said, and I felt like, oh, she's so responsive. I don't want her to have the surgery. And I said, could you put it off? And she said, oh no, I couldn't. I'm finally ready to do this. And I said, what about just 2 weeks? And she said, oh no, and I don't think my husband would like that either. We're just ready to do it. And I said, well, why don't you ask your husband about it? You know, ask your husband about it. I had a thing back then, and if something wasn't working for somebody, they didn't have to pay. So I told her, look, tell your husband you don't have to pay for these 2 weeks. We want to just see what'll happen if we can help. You won't be worse off if you have the surgery later. And so, well, that night, her husband called me up, and he was so angry, and he was furious that I would suggest that his wife put off the surgery. And in those days, I mean, this was 1977, this was considered more of a woo-woo thing. People couldn't grasp that there was science behind it, you know? And so he was just furious. And I said, and I told him it was free. I'm taking her money. I told him, look, why don't you come too? You know, he eventually hung up on me, but I called her back later, and she was trying to speak really softly so he wouldn't hear that he would hear her talking. But she said she would see if she could bring him. And the next day, she brought him. And I just showed him how to do the same thing. I think that was the first person I ever did chakras on. I just followed the energy. And I said, just feel this, just you do this. And he began doing it, and his face started getting more and more astonished. And his hand began to hurt, and her ovary began to hurt less. And it was just an amazing thing. And so by the end of this session, they had decided they were going to put it off for 2 weeks and see what happens.
So poignant.
It was good. It was good. And long story short, I would say the husband took his wife's cancer away by doing that treatment.
So she didn't need the surgery?
She didn't need the surgery.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I've had some wonderful, wonderful stories, actually, but that one was a good one.
Tell us another one.
Okay. Well, I had a mom and her little girl. She was 10 or 11. I think she was 11 years old, who'd come in. And the girl was in pain all the time. And she also was scheduled to have her appendix removed. And so as I was working with her, I thought, I don't think this is an appendix. I didn't think so. And I thought that right above the appendix, there's a valve called the ileocecal valve. And I said, and I thought, let's see if we can move the energy in that and work with it. And, well, long story short, you know, it was the ileocecal valve, and she also learned what she could do for herself. From the beginning, I've always wanted people to know that they didn't have to come back and see me. Let me load you up with what you're going to do for yourself. And so that was real rewarding, because she had missed so much school. And the ileocecal valve is a valve between the small and large intestine, so it acts an awful lot like appendix. Actually, the ileocecal valve mimics, I think it's 17 different diseases that people often think it's something else, and it's just the ileocecal valve.
So her pain went away?
Yes, completely.
And she didn't have to have surgery?
No.
It's incredible. So you have a lot of cases like that.
I do. I have a lot of cases.
Say a little bit more about what it's like to see energy. When you looked at the woman with the ovarian cancer and you looked at the girl who thought she had appendicitis, what did you actually see?
In the ovaries, first of all, I saw a lot of health in the woman with the ovarian cancer. She had a lot of health. And I even wondered, how in the world did she get this when she had so much health going in her body? But on that ovary, it was very smoky, and it billowed. The energy billowed out, and to put your hand in it, it hurt. It really hurt.
Mm. And what does health look like?
Health looks like the meridians are flowing well, the chakras are spinning as they're supposed to, the radiant circuits are alive, your aura is full, and there's movement. It's not real slow. There's some real movement, and I guess I would say about her, the one thing that you did see was that the energy of the flows all over her body, when it got to the ovary, it just, things couldn't move through easily. Couldn't move through. Sometimes it moved, but not much. So as the body does, the body's so intelligent, it just circumnavigated and would go around the ovary.
Huh.
So
you could see all that with your eyes, just...
Yes, and I would like to say that always, I do not, let's see, I think I said already, I was 20 years old before I knew that not everybody in the whole world didn't see energy. I just thought it was a normal thing. But I do think it's normal. And a lot of people, when they start working in energy medicine, that ability to see energy turns back on. It's just been dormant in us, dormant for a long time, and it can turn back on. And I also have known many children who have grown up being able to see energy because it never got turned off. Mm-hmm. And then with the other little girl, mm-hmm. she had something similar. It just, that whole area, it was so inflamed that you couldn't see at first that it wasn't the appendix. You couldn't see for sure that it wasn't. But as you start moving the energy would separate and move to where it's supposed to be going. And then you could see clearly it wasn't the appendix at all.
Wow. So the woman with ovarian cancer, you said, was 1977. You remember that date?
Yeah.
And so that's more than 4 decades ago. So back then, there weren't so many people doing this work. There was the Touch for Health Foundation.
Yes.
There were other pockets, but in terms of energy medicine wasn't a term. I mean, you didn't invent the term, but you were one of the first people to really popularize that term. And over these last 4 decades, how has the culture's relationship to energy medicine changed? What have you seen?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I've had so many people say, oh, it must have been, people must have thought you were very strange. I never noticed. I didn't notice. I was filled with enthusiasm that I knew this was the truth. Nothing threw me off. I never thought that I was strange and I better keep my mouth shut. I always opened my mouth. I always spoke about it, and I was sure that our ancient ancestors stayed alive and healthy by working with the energies in their bodies, and it was time to reclaim it because it was.
Mm-hmm.
And because the world, even 40 years ago, the world was getting already more polluted, more additives in our food, too many man-made electromagnetic energies. So much was in our atmosphere that I felt we didn't have a choice, that the people had to learn how to heal themselves and take care of their own health.
And particularly their energies.
Yes, their energies, yes.
So now, 4 decades later, what's it like to have someone who's seeing a doctor and they come to see you or come to see one of your students? Is the medical community more open to this?
Yes, the medical community is more open to this. We've had quite a few physicians go through our program. We've had many, many nurses. The world has changed so much that there is an openness. And I'm always thrilled when I see somebody from the medical community coming in and taking classes, because it says something about them. Their humbleness, their willingness to know that there's another way and that they're not on some kind of, I'm a doctor. No, it's not. And I love that. I know that they're real healers.
Right. They're taking a risk.
They're taking a risk.
And they're right on the cutting edge of this, aren't they?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
yeah,
very good.
yeah.
And there are several places in the United States now in hospitals that people are using energy medicine and in cancer wards. And
I know that the MD Anderson Center in Florida was using it, and
yes,
you gave grand rounds at the Cleveland Clinic,
yes,
which is one of the great hospitals in the country.
yes, that was great fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's an openness to accept it and understand better. And anybody who works close with the body knows there's more going on than the physical structure. I mean,
Right.
so I think it's obvious that doctors and nurses would
Right.
come on board more.